Rev up your engines! Okay, today we got a 2004 Sienna van. The woman just recently bought it. It's got 275,000 miles on it, so there's a lot of miles. She's got a problem with the check engine lights on and it's clunking. She wants me to check it all out. So we'll start with the check engine light. This one comes complete with a dog, very friendly dog. So we're gonna plug it in and we'll turn the key on. Not running, and do an auto scan. While we're waiting, things are a little bit wet. We're under the big top today. It's raining outside, but you gotta get in, so it got wet coming in. This Toyota was made in Indiana. It actually crossed through. They're coming here from Illinois. Here we go. 04 Sienna, engine, everything, and we'll do a scan. No, she doesn't care about the ABS. That stuff's not working on an old car anyways, or the cruise control. What she's interested in is the engine. Here we go, read trouble code, and the current code is P2241. Oxygen sensor pumping current circuit low. Bank 2, sensor 1. And we'll check it out. It was idling at 611. It wasn't even moving. It was going 0 miles an hour at lower speeds. Some stupid code like that trips. Perhaps the sensor's a little bit weak. It is an old vehicle. But on the other hand, it's running fine. It's not running rich or lean. That's the only engine trouble code that it has. I personally wouldn't go out and buy a new sensor just for that. It's running perfectly fine. Although I'm going to do one thing here first. We're going to check the battery. Realize one thing about modern cars. Everything runs by computer. So we're going to check the battery first, just to make sure. You don't want to spend days chasing your tail to find out all you had was a low battery. You get any kind of a low current code, always check the battery first. In vehicle, this is a regular battery top post, and the cranking amp is 600. Aha, it's on 600. What luck. Here we go. We're testing the battery. Good battery. Just 553 cranking amps, almost 100% state of charge, so it's not a battery problem. Now, the battery's okay. So, odds are in this, the oxygen sensor is worn, not pulling the right amount of current, but it runs good. It's not running rich. It's not running lean. It gets decent gas mileage. It runs good enough, so it's a little bit worn. I mean, it's got 275,000 miles on it, so got a lot of mileage. Little things like that, don't expect perfection when things get that old. Just like people like me. Okay, I'm 68 years old. I don't get up like I used to. I don't work at 100%, but I'm still going pretty good. Same thing, get an old van like this, don't throw money on stuff if it runs okay. You don't need it to pass emission stuff. They don't check that stuff in your area. It runs as good as this. Now, if it really went totally bad and it started running poorly, yeah, that'd be the first thing you change. But that's not the case here. So let's see where the clunking's coming from. We're gonna run it and put it in park and neutral, see if anything's rattling here. Okay, now do it again. You can see it's moving back and forth. Do it again. It's rattling back and forth. Now she had to get the flex pipe changed. That's the pipe on the bottom. It's flexible because these are front wheel drive vehicles and the engine always moves a tiny bit. And if it was a solid piece of steel, eventually it would snap the weld. So it has to flex. The reason she had to replace the flex hose is because the whole assembly, the tranny and the engine's moving and that broken. What's going on here is either a motor mount or a transmission mount is going bad. So out with the jack. Now there's mounts all over the place. We have to try to see them to see which ones are coming apart. Now there's the front one. Jack it a little bit more and we'll let it down. Well, it's not the front one, it didn't move. Now down there is the bottom one right there. There it is. You can see it down here. Super bright now. And it's not moving either. So the side one in the front isn't bad either. So we're going under with the flashlight. And lo and behold, I can see the transmission mount on the back is worn. That's what's cracked. The hardest one to get to, of course. You can really hear it. She's gonna be wiggling the tire. We'll go underneath. There it is. And the back mount's wiggling back and forth. That's what it needs. It's just all worn down to the bare metal. Now, they're not cheap mounts. There's two of them. They're 247 bucks a piece. So what you do is, find a guy with a lift. It's almost impossible to do on the ground. Have them loosen all the mounts, jack it up, and then check them all. While you're down there, there's no sense. If The others are all cracked and starting to break, just replacing one. You got to take a lot of stuff off. It's about a $350 job. While you're in there, you might as well check them all, because you don't want to pay the labor twice and find out they're going to break. But it sounds horrible. She thought the car was falling apart. It's not falling apart. It's just a stupid mount. But of course, the mounts, there's metal, rubber, then metal. And what happens is when the rubber wears out, then you got metal on metal. And that's why it sounds like this. That's metal rubbing on metal. Now, we'll take it for a road test to see how it's doing anyway. And you'll notice when we shift into neutral, you can hear the little clunk. Steering shafts go bad on these all the time. But if they handle good enough, most people leave it alone, because that's like a $1,500 job replacing that. Now, for 275,000 miles, this thing is still idling smooth. Goes down the road pretty good. After all, she drove it from Illinois all the way to Tennessee here to have me check it out. And really, still got plenty of power. And it's a van. Still, it doesn't handle all that bad on the corners, if you kind of cut them a little short. Now, of course, if you play with the gas, you can feel and hear the clunk. That's because the mount's worn. She was worried that the transmission was going out. The transmission shifts perfectly fine. As you can see, as it's shifting, you can't even feel it shift. The tranny's still in excellent shape. It's just that the mount is broken. When you floor it, it downshifts and goes. There's nothing wrong with the transmission. It's just that the mount is breaking, and now metal hits metal, and that's what that horrible noise is, as you saw when it was jacked up and we pulled on the wheel, and the axle was making it move back and forth and clanking. It's not all that big of a deal, really. She thought, oh, my transmission's going on. That's going to cost a fortune. I'll have to get rid of it. No, you can see, going down the road works perfectly fine. I mean, really. Okay, it's old. It's a 2004. It's got 275,000 miles on it. Yeah, the intermittent steering shaft is worn. They all get worn on these Sienna vans eventually when they get high mileage. Doesn't need a transmission mount. I'd change that. I wouldn't mess with the oxygen sensor. She doesn't live where they do inspections anyways, and it runs perfectly fine. For its age and mileage, it's still in excellent shape. And the little dog agrees. Now, there's one cool customer. He doesn't care that his owner's not here, that the strange guy's driving it around. Look, he's just happy as can be sitting there. If only people could be this happy themselves, just lying around and chilling. Perhaps we should be all more like satisfied, happy little dogs. Hey, this dog's got a lot of mileage on it too, and it's still humming along pretty good. So what have we learned today? Well, we learned an old Toyota van with 275,000 miles can still have a lot of life, but that it's an old van. It's going to have quirks and calms. But just like Travis here, hey, it still can be a happy experience driving it. Don't drive like a crazy racing driver. It's getting old, and it's in Illinois cars, a lot of rust. Eventually, enough rust can happen that things can snap off, so you don't want to race around too much. But for a driving around van, it's still got quite a bit of life. The only thing I would do would be replace the transmission mount on it. And of course, check all the others when you got to take it apart, because there's no sense spending all that labor. The labor is getting it all up in the air and getting that mount off, and you got to loosen the other mounts, so you might as well check them all while you're doing the job. Because just like Travis and me, we're getting a little long on the tooth, but we can still get down the road rather comfortably. And here's some bonus questions and answers. John Gibson says, love your show. I got a 96 Taurus and an X. Like it wants to die at the light. The engine feels like it's not giving enough gas. I changed the fuel filter and pump and 3 fuel injectors. But when I drive away, it feels like the transmission is slipping, but not all the time. First, you got to figure out, do you have an engine problem or you have a transmission problem? If you take off and it revs up, but it doesn't take off and the transmission is slipping, then your transmission's going out. And I would assume it is. It's a 96 Taurus. Those had relatively weak transmissions. I'm surprised it's still going down the road. Now, I don't know if you're the original owner or not. If you're not, it's probably been replaced by some of the previous owners, because I've never seen one in a Taurus 96 last that long. When it starts slipping, your engine revs up, but it doesn't take off, that's a transmission failure, or a torque converter, which is inside the transmission that bolts it to the engine. Probably bet you have a transmission problem. Any mechanic can check it out in 2 minutes. Just take it for a spin. They'll say, yeah, your transmission's slipping. And in a 96 Taurus, I'd just say drive it until it drops, because it's not worth spending thousands fixing a transmission on that old thing. It just isn't working. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.